This is my second salon I'm hosting. And as such, I am a person that's in transition from working full time. I say in transition. Hey there, Ron. Welcome. And welcome,
Well,
Dennis. Just a little bit about myself. I'm Dale. I live on the East Coast of the US, and I've been living through a very interesting transition and thought that I'd go ahead and host a salon for people in maybe a similar situation or toying with this idea of what happens when I don't have to work full time anymore. The first one was on identity, and that one actually went well enough to where I decided I'd go ahead and give it another try. When I say another try, another session around usefulness. I have an idea for numbers 3 and 4, but you'll have to wait another 6 or 8 weeks for what number 3 and number 4 look like. But first one was losing identity, meaning I'm a person with a certain label, a certain position, a certain place in society, and then you lose that. And then this one is on being useful. And that is, how useful am I when I'm no longer in a structure that forces usefulness? And that structure being, right, showing up 40 hours a week, having responsibilities, having people I'm accountable to. So, simple ground rules. We go by first names. We don't try and fix anybody else, meaning we speak about like our own sort of experience, right? So we're not here to tell people what to do. And thirdly, silence is allowed. I am willing to wait as long as 7 whole seconds for people to volunteer. Okay. So to open for myself personally, it was about 6 weeks ago. I walked out of a full-time role and it was like close the door. And all of a sudden, all that structure of random people I had daily or weekly interaction with
interactions.
just gone, right?
Right.
And in the last 6 weeks, no reason for them to text me, no reason for them to IM me through Teams to say, Dale, I need this, or what happened to that, or what's the status of this. It's like completely empty. So I'm
Yeah.
reading an older book written in the 90s called The Empty Raincoat by Charles Handy. And he
Mm.
talks about these cycles of like hitting the peak and then finding the next thing, and then hitting the peak and finding the next sort of escalating sine wave.
Hmm.
And what was remarkable about that is just, well, I haven't found the next thing to lift me up, right? And then it was, okay, well, what does that look like when the structure of work, right, is gone? And
Hmm.
for most of us, right, there are some of us here that have retired already. There are some of us here that are thinking about retirement. Myself, I'm in the middle of whatever that means in terms of leaving full-time work, and maybe it's a portfolio type thing. Now, for most of our careers, right, being useful isn't an option. It's like, no, we pay you to be useful, right? We pay you to do a job. It's like you do your job, there's a reason that we pay you. Now, when no one then is expecting you to be useful, how does it feel different when it's up to you to be useful? And anyone can chime in, right? Where we go from now, even if you're already still, I'm sorry, you're still working, imagine if you weren't. Then the question is just that. If you've already retired, well, how did you find usefulness? Now, we're not talking about productivity. We're not talking about, something that was fulfilling for you. We're talking about something specific, which was you choosing to be helpful or useful or contributing to others. So I'll stop here and wait for anyone to share.
Well, so, so I retired in 2015, and I um, actually I think some of the things that I learned and tried to apply was really um, a lot of introspection about what's valuable, what I consider impactful and useful, um, and fulfilling for myself.
Hmm.
Um, and then doing a lot of experimentation. Um, and and so once. I think oftentimes with my clients, it's like probably out of say a 3 month engagement, 2 months is really about introspection and understanding more and observing, and exercises to observe what's really giving you energy versus sucking away energy,
Mm.
and that gives you insight about. I think one of the things is recognizing. Um, Oftentimes there are lots of things happening, and it's a matter of recognizing, being able to actually see the things right in front of you that are fulfilling. And so you kind of have to be aware of what they are, and suddenly things kind of pop up, because you've raised that awareness. um, Otherwise you can kind of search for something, and I think meander, without forward progress.
It's interesting. I note that lots of people aren't very good at introspection. I agree that it's very important.
It's very difficult. Um, and oftentimes I think one of the big challenges is that it's, you know, your sense of purpose and value is either driven by family obligations or work obligations or expectations. And so asking what's actually fulfilling for myself, is oftentimes something they haven't practiced for 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah, although self-fulfillment is different than being useful to others. I mean, there's certainly
Yeah.
areas that it overlaps, but then
Yeah.
there are areas where I do something as a hobby. I mean, I
Hmm.
think of a friend, for example. I was in Carlsbad, Southern California, just last week, catching up with a friend who retired maybe maybe a year ahead of me. And, his life was very, very different, right? Where it's like he plays soccer, he does gleaning, which is like picking up harvest, for a food bank. Um, he does surfing because he lives in Encinitas, right? The whatever, we talked about, the whole triathlete culture there. But it was a lot of things that fulfilled him. And as I
Hmm.
was chatting with him about his retired life, I just began to think about this topic for tonight, which is like, okay, if I were to glean, or there's a local food bank here called Manna. I know a person who's on the board of Manna. I can certainly like lend my hands to physically help at the Manna Food Bank. But that's like what, a $15 an hour job. And it's like, is that how Dale's to contribute to society? Oh, Dennis, please.
Uh, First of all, I spend a lot of time at the Encinitas LA Fitness, and I could tell you that the majority of the people at that particular gym are baby boomers like me, and the majority of the people at the gym in Riverside are not. So I think there's a distinct difference in age in North County, San Diego. But
Sure.
I'm thinking about being useful in the way you were just describing, and I was trying to think of my own usefulness that was never job related, uh, and I feel one of my activities is taking feral cats from the neighborhood um, group of
Hmm,
cats
hmm.
in to get fixed. And there's a program, trap, neuter, release. And so I trap the cats and I take them in and I pay the money and I bring them back and I release them. And our our neighborhood has continues to have a cat colony, but they're not out of control in terms of breeding. There's a couple I still need to get, but
See,
I think
Dennis, what you've done by raising your hands is multiply the number of hands raised, which I think is great. So, John,
uh-huh. I'm going to
maybe it
lower
was
it
the cat,
now.
maybe it was the you mentioning cats, hits a nerve, but it's all good. John, please.
Yeah, so I retired a bit early. I was age 48. We were in Asia, and it was driven partly by family, by geography, and a desire to change. But it was also, I would say, importantly driven by the fact that I felt not very good at what I was doing anymore, and
Hmm.
and also not very interested in what I was doing. So I kind of
Hmm.
lost interest, and
Yeah.
we moved to Santa Fe without really
Hmm.
any goal other than I wanted to find some form of engagement, and I wanted
Yeah.
to be in a situation where my wife doesn't kill me for being around too
That's
much.
important. Yep.
Yeah. I play the oboe, not very well, but I joined an orchestra, and that was
Hmm.
an opportunity to do that. But I also tried to set up a nonprofit. There's some science. There's a very respected science institute here in Santa Fe, and
Sure.
I got involved with them, and we tried to do things. It didn't, in the end, really catch on. Then this other thing I mentioned at Northwestern University, which led to founding a company in Brooklyn and
Sure.
involved in that.
That's so interesting that here it is, you naturally found ways to be useful that involved others, right? That it wasn't just you playing the oboe by yourself. No, it was you playing in an orchestra, right? They need oboe players, for heaven's sakes. Oboe's really hard to play. Ask
it
me how I
is
know.
it's very hard to play. But
Yeah.
it was more, I felt my identity was very much tied in with the
Yeah.
work that I was doing, my
Yeah.
Hmm.
career,
Hmm.
which was mostly overseas in Europe and
Yeah.
Asia.
I mean,
And then all of a sudden finding myself without that, and how do I describe myself when I
yeah.
meet new people? It doesn't feel awkward now, but it felt awkward then. Well, I don't do anything. I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yet. You didn't know it yet.
Yeah.
And Kimiko, what do you have to share?
Just really quick, I just wanted to maybe note that when you mention what are we doing to be useful, maybe another way of looking at it is what's the legacy we're leaving behind? You know,
Yep.
what when we go, how are we going to be remembered?
Yep.
Hmm.
Now, today I did something very unusual, and that is to start and finish a book within one day. But it was really appropriate, and it put me in a really interesting frame as I finished it right about 7 o'clock this evening. It's called What You Are Looking For is in the Library. It's a novel by a Japanese woman, translated to 2023, and it's just a series of short stories, 5 different short stories. And the reason I talk about what you're looking for is in the library is because the last one is a 65-year-old man who worked 43 years at the same company. And then he has to face the reality, which is exactly this topic. And at the end of the story, it ends beautifully in terms of tying all the different vignettes, all the 4 prior vignettes together, not to spoil it for you, but what he realizes is that there's this whole world of society
Yeah.
that's not just his job, that
Right.
society just wasn't you toiling away for 43 years at a cookie company. No, it was people, right? It was interactions. It was his own spouse. It was his own community. It was the random person in a very, I mean, just a very humble and small kind of way. And I think it just reminded me of society is can be as small as your own family and as large as this one generic thing like John was talking about this, he's involved in like all kinds of things that span, geography and space, Northwestern and all this, right? And Richard, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the discussion a bit with something. I
Hmm.
increasingly find myself thinking that the word retirement is a
Yeah.
flawed
Obsolete.
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Say what?
obsolete, flawed, whatever. I
Obsolete.
mean,
Yes.
what does it even mean, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I,
Yep.
I think life is a series of adventures or whatever. But if you left your job in your 30s, you don't say I'm retired. You say I left my job. I'm going to go on to do whatever I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
And there's this idea that life ends at some age, and then you're supposed to just volunteer and, go to the gym and not have any reason for existing. I'm increasingly finding myself resisting that sort of set of
Hmm.
Yep.
words and assumptions and everything else that we
So
have
let's
imposed on
let's
ourselves.
let's resolve within this group. Let's retire the word retired. So, Richard, I ask you then, what do you substitute it with? Because I've been thinking about this as well. What do you substitute it with? Or
As
anybody
a
else?
word or as a
Yeah,
way
as
of
a
thinking?
word or as a concept or what have you.
Um, Well, I think there's two frames. There's for myself and there's for society. In society, I don't think we've really solved how to substitute it. Most people still talk about retirement and, the media writes about retirement and all that. For myself, I just, I've worked for myself for quite a long time anyway.
Yeah.
And so that whole framing of someone paying you to do something and then you stop isn't terribly relevant to me.
Yep.
I feel like life's just, as I said, a series of adventures. And just
Hmm.
because you get to a certain age, so what? I guess
Yeah.
at some
So,
point, if you're cognitively impaired or you can't walk or something, that's maybe different. But I feel like so long as you have your vitality, then just move to the next adventure. And some of them maybe need to generate money, some don't. I've always felt like life is partly about having a bit of money and partly about doing something interesting. And so, depending on your personal economic circumstances, I guess the balance between those two things changes. So that's how I think about it.
so Richard, we'll just call you the adventurer. I think
There
I'll
you
take
go.
that.
You know,
What
I thought
Yeah.
what do
about
you
it
do?
I
as
Go
I thought
ahead,
about
John.
it as chapters, but
Yeah,
I like the word adventure. I mean, it is.
adventures.
I think we live
Yeah.
our lives in chapters. That's the way I've seen
Yeah.
mine,
Well,
and
the Wall Street
um,
Journal for years has had a section called Encore, right? And
Hmm.
somebody wrote a book with regard to like this idea of there is more to come, right?
Hmm.
Meaning it wasn't just the main event, there are other events to follow. But I've been thinking about, well, what do I substitute it with? Any other ideas from this group? How to retire the word retired?
The LinkedIn recommends that nobody put that they're retired, that you put that you're a consultant. So, so I went
I think most people do follow that.
from a retired principal to educational leadership consultant.
There you go.
But I rather prefer being a cat catcher.
There you go. Chief cat catcher. That's really good. Are those feral cats difficult to catch, by the way?
Well, I had one that wouldn't get trapped. She was able to live inside the trap and not set it off. And I ended up having to get a drop trap in order to trap her. She was pretty clever. And then she moved into the house. So I have a feral cat living in the house now. Um,
Wow.
a smart one.
but
Yeah.
um, the I mean, like I said, I retired, but during season I coach swimming and water polo at the local high school, and I find that that's also useful,
Hmm.
and it allows me to do the parts of my former job that I enjoyed the most, which is hanging out with teenage students, and the part I liked least, which was
Hmm.
running interference for the state and federal government.
Hmm.
Um, so now I get to do the one and not the other, and I think that that works out pretty well for me.
I mean, you bring up a really good point, Dennis. That is, each of us have such rich experience and knowledge and wisdom. And just to park it in the I'm retired just doesn't work, right? Because there's so much to transmit in the coaching, in the mentoring, and the using what you know. And I think that that's where I ended up landing, which was, oh my gosh, right? I can do fractional work that like just like you're doing. Where I get to work with people I like. I get to
Hmm.
do the work that I enjoy doing. And
Yeah.
actually, then, everybody wins rather than the zero sum game that oftentimes we have to make compromises for in a sort of a regular full time role.
and you can
Yeah.
probably get paid if you want to, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I do. And that's when I was thinking about this multiple of Manna Food hands versus I should just write a check to Manna Food, right? I mean, if I'm
Right.
earning 25 times more than, a minimum wage person at Manna Food, it's like, hey, I'll just start giving to Manna Food out of the abundance, right? Which is like, hey, I don't really need to make more money. I mean, that phase is over for a lot of
Mhm.
us. It already is. It's no longer about money, and that's part of the challenge, right? When I'm no longer chasing after like consulting jobs for money, it's
Yeah.
well, chasing after consulting jobs to actually be useful and have impact and work with people I
Yeah.
like working with. Kimiko, you have
Yeah.
your hand raised.
I guess my question too to everybody is when you're trying to figure out what to be useful, like how do you go about it? I mean, John Schneider, you're saying you figured out you want to catch feral cats in your neighborhood,
No,
and
no, not me.
it's like
He's
how
not
do
the
you
cat.
well,
Dennis is the
I would
cat.
yeah, Dennis, I'm sorry, Dennis. Dennis, you're the cat catcher. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Somebody was
The
a cat
cat guy
catcher.
sounds much better than the cat lady. That's for sure.
But at the end of the day, it's like, when we're on our deathbed, what are we gonna talk about? I mean, what are we gonna think about? Besides, I mean, if you take away work, sure, that's a majority of our life, but at the end of the day, what really matters? I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm always thinking about as far as being useful. Like, how am I gonna feel like I mattered to somebody, at the
Mhm.
end of the day, and you're looking back.
Yeah. Um, Quick question. How do you raise your hand? I
Oh,
can't
There's
find, I
React. You
can't,
go to React down below
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
and click on it, and you'll see that there's a lot of
Oh, click
noise
on,
there. But
I was
Yeah.
clicking on the, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Yeah. Yeah. I was clicking on the up arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry.
it was 2 weeks ago. I've got three siblings, and they all live in Southern California. And it was about 3 weeks ago. One of my older sisters made a really bad choice about, a family affair, and it was really obvious what she was doing. And I felt it was just such a bad look after how many decades. I'm 63, she's like 67. After 67 years, it's like such a bad look. And believe it or not, my spouse basically told me, you should go no contact, just ignore, just whatever. And instinctively, I knew this is not the right thing because out of anybody who's going to show up at my funeral, my sister is going to show up. And I'm like, would I like to like go no contact because of this situation and her big mistake, which she apologized for, by the way. And I had ignored her text message for like 4 weeks ago. And I had to make the conscious choice that when I was visiting her in Los Angeles, that yeah, she found out that I was in Southern California for a USC orientation where my son is starting this fall, and that yes, I was available to stop by her house, and yes, we'd have a chat. And frankly, it was all good, right? I went ahead and made amends, talked to her about sort of the decision at hand, and it was all fine. But it was wild, right? Where I was actually thinking afterwards, like, Dale, were you actually seriously considering cutting somebody out of your life who like has known you longer than you've been alive? I mean, for crying out loud, right? Your own sibling has known you as long as you're then just say, well, I've got two other siblings, so what's two out of three. But it was one of those things where I was thinking, Kimiko, exactly about that. What really matters? Who's going to be at my funeral? I can only count on a few people to be at my funeral, right? Frankly. And Ron, okay, you learned how to raise your hand for better or for worse. Go for it.
Yeah. Um, so I mentioned that I retired early in 2015, and I ended up doing some, philanthropy, grant making, social impact investing. Um, there's a philanthropy that I joined and became a partner in, and it was really good. Um, but what I also, I mean, because the community was really good, the people who were involved, I thought were really interesting people, and I was learning a lot from them. Um, I also sort of realized, though, that the sense of the need to do philanthropy or grant making and was kind of driven by obligation, or the sense of expectation that, you've retired and now you do good. And so there, it wasn't. I think one of the things I found was it wasn't as authentically driven by my own interests. And so then I explored other things, like I explored opening up an ice cream store, because I thought that's a great way to impact people and bring me joy. um, and then, after 7 years, actually, I ended up going back to tech. And so now I'm a CTO, and full full time. It's kind of a lifestyle business. But what I found was, I authentically like designing things, building things, interacting, solving problems, being challenged, and I think I'm making an impact on the business. And that I thought was, I found is truly authentic. And then I've also carved out time to do other things in terms of sort of, like I said, the coaching and building new community. Because the other thing that changes is, well, I got divorced, so it kind of required a change of community in a sense. There's his and her, friends and so forth. And kids, parents who were part of my community, and work was part of my community, and all of those things were changing. Um, and I think I'm living my best life right now, in terms of, building my own community of people with interests that I share, helping them, because I don't know, this concept of being useful is a little bit dangerous, I think, in the sense that it, just like people draw, will pursue wealth as an end goal in itself. Um, I think, and I've had clients who measure the, post retirement success as, how do I measure usefulness? How do I, essentially replace wealth with usefulness measurement and impact,
Hey, come on, we want
impact.
KPIs. Give me
Yeah,
the
exactly.
KPIs.
It's the metric driven, and it's like, is and you kind of raised an example, which is it really um less valuable or impactful if you volunteer at the church, and you're contributing to a smaller pool of people, or do you have to make a global impact? One of my clients found a website which ranked the most impactful things, the biggest problems in the world, and ranked the things that you could do to solve these biggest problems in the
Hmm.
world. And it was, and the thing that he looked at it and he goes, well, he had several exits. He had several successful IPOs, and so he was independently wealthy at the age of 35. And but he looked at them and said, but I don't really care about a lot of these. I mean, eh, intellectually they make a difference. But he was from Hawaii, and he goes, I think I'd rather volunteer at Lahaina for the for the recovery after the fire. And it's like, that's a perfectly fine thing to do.
Mhm.
It's not his responsibility. I think that's the part, that he felt this responsibility to change the world for good. And so he was being driven previously by sort of family expectations and his own drive to succeed. And now he's driven by these external factors to succeed in impact.
Hmm.
And so they're externally imposed, as opposed to, you know self-driven, and I think he'll find the right way. He's not going to be making gold-plated toilets. Yeah, he'll eventually do good, but putting the burden of solving the world's problem or having these metrics of impact were pretty onerous
Well,
and
before
unnecessary.
Yeah, it's interesting that you started in talking about your own history with philanthropy and then going back into sort of a technical role, and then you saying, well, now you're living your best life. Your best life wasn't in the sort of prior. And then the other people, and then further to that, I learned just today about Chuck Feeney, the founder of duty free stores, who
Mhm.
gave $8 billion of his wealth away. $8 billion in
Mhm.
secret, starting in 1982, was it?
Mhm.
And his cover was blown only in 1997 when duty-free shops was sold to LV, the luxury goods firm.
Louis Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton, yeah. So
Yeah.
then it's like, yeah, there's no way, right? It's just kind of unbelievable as like apparently he is like the shining example of somebody who gave 99% of his wealth away while he was still alive.
Mhm.
Uh and that was like impact of that is remarkable. But I've got two hands waiting to share something. John,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that certainly does not lend itself to KPIs and things like that. I think, I found, for example, when I was really engaged in my day job, my relationships were maybe somewhat transactional. I mean, they had a lot to do with my work. When I
Yep.
Mhm.
moved, I had new friends. When I left graduate
Yep.
school, I didn't really do a very good job of maintaining or cultivating those relationships. And I find now that my life doesn't lend itself to that kind of scrutiny. I think about cultivating community, relationships that I had maybe neglected, and I see the way my girls do that. I have two daughters. They've been very good at doing that. But I think that fulfillment comes in, or usefulness. I prefer the word fulfillment, that it
Yeah.
Mhm.
comes in lots of different shades and colors, and
Mhm.
there are lots of ways to do it, and it's not so much the quantity, like
Mhm.
having a checklist. Okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Of course, being healthy, being capable is a
Mm,
big deal as well.
mm,
But I think this is kind of an opportunity to take kind of a holistic look at life and to kind of assess, gee, these are things I've done in the past. Here are things I wish I did better.
Mhm.
I wish I had done it this way rather than that way, or
mm.
but I think it's a very rich time of life to not to be in kind of a competition even with yourself, but to
Mhm.
really think about what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess fulfillment has two different sides to it, right? The personally fulfilling versus the personally fulfilling that relates to others. And the reason I say that, yeah, people can indulge in a hobby like stamp collecting, or one friend of mine plays pickleball and just completely into pickleball, and I have no idea, I have no desire, just for the record, to play pickleball. But they find that fulfilling because they get the exercise and the social aspect, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's where, right, it's, you might say, well, usefulness could be just so KPI oriented and performative. I get that. At the same time, fulfilling can be so selfish and just for me, and that's the fault line. Like, and here we have two more hands. Kimiko, please.
I was just gonna throw out the question or the thought that when we're talking about philanthropy through, giving maybe a lot of money that can affect a lot of people, but maybe isn't for that person who's a philanthropist isn't as impactful, that maybe it comes down to how we relate to what we're doing to be useful. And
That's
Mhm.
right.
that's really what makes it, to me, significant, or that's what makes it
Fulfilling.
something worth doing. If
Yes.
you're giving $1 billion, but you could care less about how that $1 billion, who it goes to, or, you could care less. I just don't see the value as maybe just doing one thing for, somebody, maybe a friend in need, and taking the time and, the energy and the effort to help that person. Then that, on a personal standpoint, can mean so much more.
Hmm.
Interesting. John, you've been very patient.
No, I really enjoyed the conversation. I kind of want to reply to Kamiko's question from a few minutes ago about how you figure out how to be useful, and then throw something out to see if you guys want to respond to it. But
Yeah.
like y'all, I've been thinking about in a couple of years when I retire, and I'm going to give myself a year to goof off too, and then re-engage, or at least a year. But I do vacillate between, okay, I'm going to get back in and do something like I'm doing now, but not get paid for it. But then sometimes I think about a way of being useful that's completely different. And I'll just tell you this, bearing my soul. There's a neuroscientist named Lisa Feldman Barrett. She wrote a book called How Emotions Are Made, and another one called 7.5 Rules for the Brain. She doesn't know me from Adam, but I believe I've thought about when I retire, if I still have, abilities, that I would just stop and carry water for her, either as like a virtual assistant, or find out how I could use my decades of experience to help make her life better so she can write another book or do another study or something. And
Mhm.
that would lead to no fame and no not much of an interesting headstone.
Hmm.
But I would, Kamiko and Dale and everybody else, say, all right, I've been useful. I have now shifted to supporting someone else who's younger than me and still has an ability to affect the world and make the world a better place. So
That is a key thing, this idea of leaving a place better than you found it, right? And again, I get back to my friend who's playing pickleball all the time. I just don't see the world getting better through more pickleball playing. I do see the world getting better, though, through if I were to give that 25x income to Mana Food, and like Kimiko was saying, more than just writing a check, but actually putting something into it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe connecting with the board member of Mana is like, how can I add my skills to your organization? I'm really good at sales and marketing, whatever. I can help, push the effort. And John, I love what you say, because it's like there's somebody that you've identified as a person that you'd like to help with, not caring what credit you get. You put it this way, carrying water. Very few people want to cut wood and chop water, but for anybody who's been out in the real world knows that wood and water are super important to survive. And you're saying you'd like to enable that, which I think is superb. Ron, you have your hand up again? You know how to use that button now. Go ahead.
So I don't mean to be harsh. So take it in the right way. Um, you've talked about your friends who played pickleball, and you say, are they really having an impact on the world? Is that a useful life? Um, and so I guess my response would be that's kind of their business,
Yeah, it's true.
and and
Yep.
and so and the things that you described as goodness are yours, and and we can share that or not share
Yeah.
that either way. But I think there is a maybe it's maybe fulfillment, fulfilling is a certain level of selfishness, but I think that's not necessarily bad to you know
Yeah.
to be driven by these sort of external value system versus more
Mm.
internal value system, and say, yeah, I would love to spend my work as a consultant and contribute the money and have a greater impact on Mana. That's a great concept. That and you can feel very fulfilled by doing that. um, rescuing feral cats is also, you know,
Yeah,
kind of equally valid, right?
yeah,
Because and so I think putting it into some type of a I keep going back to sort of the KPI aspect. Well, is this better than this level of usefulness, or am I being more useful, less useful? Am I having a
yeah,
bigger impact on the world than um, you
yeah.
know? I mean, I guess if on my headstone, if somebody said he was a good man, that wouldn't be bad. That wouldn't be a bad, epitaph.
Yeah, but then that goodness is seen as not as champion pickleball player or soccer player or I mean whatever, right? That floats people's boat.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
believe me,
I mean,
I guess this particular
so
topic among this particular group, we're self-selecting for the people who think about the
very
larger picture,
sure,
right?
sure.
There are plenty of people who just want to sit on a boat or sit on the beach and just be retired in the true sense of the word. I mean, they are just retired
In the old sense of the word.
in the old sense of the word. That's right. In the Richard non-approved sense of the word. And, for them, it's fine. Bless them. They have a happy life. They're sitting on the boat or sitting on the beach. And for Dale, it's like, just kill me
That-
already.
and
It's
well,
like,
exactly. And, and
yeah,
and I'm saying that's great. That's great. And
yeah,
and, and that's the introspection, which is, hey,
yeah,
that's not meaningful to me. That's not
right.
how I want to live my life. That's not how I want to be remembered. Totally
Yeah,
valid.
yeah.
I just want I'd be a little careful about invalidating
No,
others'
understood.
goals.
Understood. And Kimiko, you really brought up a good thing, which was, and maybe we can sort of conclude on this, which is what thing would we like to try as far as usefulness? John was a great
Yeah.
example of suggesting something that he'd like to try. What about you
Mhm.
others? Have you thought of something that you'd like to try that you haven't done before in order to be useful? The longest pause of the meeting. Well, maybe I got you thinking, which is good. Which is in what? Okay, Kimiko.
Um, I'm gonna, this is something that I've actually done, but what I wanted to try in order to be useful was to actually give myself time off because
Mhm.
I was pushing myself and so driven to do things
Yeah.
and accomplish things
Hmm,
that I would bulldoze and I wasn't helping anybody. Um,
hmm.
and when I took the time to step back and force myself to not do anything, when I did help people and when I did do things that were useful,
Mhm.
I came back with much bigger impact. So that might be a pickleball for your friend there. Maybe that's what they need.
Right.
Who knows?
A
Yeah.
renewal
And
exercise.
refreshing, possibly.
Yeah.
To break the patterns, old patterns. I think you'll get tired of pickleball after a couple of years. Yeah. I mean, no, seriously. I mean, people talk about retiring and golfing, and after a couple of years, it's like I've done all the courses in North America and all the top ones. And what do I do? What do I do now?
What do I do
Uh,
now? Yeah. What's
yeah,
next?
what's next? So
I
John?
hear it's a 5-year period. After 5 years, you like
Oh, interesting.
can't do it anymore.
Interesting. 5 years of golf. Maybe there are people who say, but I want to try those 5 years. And bless them, right? They enjoy it. So, John, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, for me, something that was for sure out of my comfort zone. I mentioned I play the oboe, but
Yeah.
I suffer stage fright. Um, at the same time, I volunteered at my daughter's high school to sing in The Music Man, a production of The Music Man, which was really beyond my comfort zone, and public speaking. So that's something I find very difficult, and have gotten used to, but I still find it very difficult to do that.
That's great. Any other thoughts from Dennis or Richard as far as things you'd like to try?
I'm going to try pickleball.
What could go wrong? Holy, what could go wrong? No downside at all. Invented in the US so his family can write the entertainment and what have you. I've heard so much about pickleball and it's all good.
So
The
I guess I do want to I want to plug, maybe do a little plug for the pickleball, but it doesn't really have anything to do with usefulness. So I guess maybe not. But like one of my goals is now that now the competition of people 65 and over who swim competitively
Mhm.
is small enough that I could conceivably make nationals. So
Wow.
at this point, I'm like, well, I could train and go to nationals at 65 and compete with the 65, you know,
Mhm.
other 65-year-old men. And that might be fun. It it's an activity that I think I would enjoy.
Sure. Yeah.
I I I guess I understand getting bored with golf. Um, I never got bored with racing my bicycle. I could just do that forever and not and and enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as one thing among many, or to the exclusion of everything else?
No. I did have some friends who took retirement as the opportunity to spend all of their time, um, which when I was still working was very frustrating to be beaten
Mhm.
by an old guy, right? Because they're spending six
Yeah.
hours a day training, and I get, an hour and a half or 2 hours a night. So that's I decided. So that's one of the things though that I have thought about is this sort of problem with like it's a big problem in academia where people don't retire, and then we have all of these
Mhm.
young PhD docs that can't get academic because people
Mhm.
like me are sitting on their job till
Yep.
they're
Yep.
80. And it's not so bad in being a high school principal because that's kind of got a burnout time of less than 50 years. But I do want to let the younger generations like at the world do their thing. So I think part of my uh, attempt to be useful is includes helping the next generations where I can, rather than putting any kind of limit on them by me thinking that I need to be doing the thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It that's an interesting angle as far as sort of competitive sport and the community it engenders, right? Because people with similar interests, and there's a whole social component to that as well as the whole competitive to port to that. And you mentioned, swimming in the 65 and above age group. You can be just so much of an inspiration to us early 60s people. It's like, hey, there's hope, or people in their 50s or 40s, like, hey, there's hope, right? Um, Ron, you have your hand up again. You keep finding that button. Yes.
I found the button.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I mean, one of the things that Dennis brought up. So one of my a bucket list thing for me was to ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles,
Huh.
and so I did that ride, and that was also to raise money for the Arthritis Foundation. And so kind of two birds with one stone. Um, Being able to do the ride, and I raised $10,000 for the foundation and had a great time. You know, uh, Engaged in a new community. Um, and what I ended up doing was basically doing all the charity rides as training rides for the charity ride. So along the way, it's like, oh, okay, I might as well just kind of double down on something that I'm passionate about and have an impact. Because I do, I mean, as much as I say, pickleball's fine, and just doing that in itself is fine. I do have this share the same sense that, hey, we should have some type of impact on the community,
Sure.
on the world and humanity, in some little way at least.
Yeah, it all matters. I mean, the
Yeah,
things that we pay attention to, the things that we
yeah,
do in life, it all matters. It all counts.
yeah.
Well, I want to thank each one of you for giving up a precious hour of your adventure-filled life. I will have another one of these in between 6 and 8 weeks on the next topic, which is going to be first was identity, the second is on usefulness, the third you can imagine. So, like, just be in bated breath. And hope to see you again. It's been just such a pleasure. Thank you for all your contributions. I think it was just really a lot of fun. And I guess maybe I'll just put it out there. This is my own idea of being useful in my
Mhm.
activity, which is to get people together to talk about things that matter to them. And right
Mhm.
now, I'm trying to figure out the next angle, which is how do I get, and I like what you mentioned, Dennis, about teaching young people. I got to think about what that angle is as far as beyond my own children. How can I influence more young
Yeah,
people?
right.
As far as the things I've learned, the things I can pass on, in what context. I was involved in scouting for many years when the boys were young. I don't want to go back to that organization for a lot of good reasons, which mainly I've seen every single kind of problem a scoutmaster could ever last for. I have enough problems for a couple lifetimes. So I don't want to go back to that role, but nonetheless, I'm now working on that. So thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. All
Thanks.
right.
Thank you.
See y'all next
Thanks a
All
time.
right.
lot.
Bye.
Cheers.